Hi and welcome to Art Television for another series in the Game Changers story about Sri Lankans who have changed the world. And today, here we are in the Biagama zone to talk with Mr. Rohan Pallewatta, Executive Chairman of Lanka Harness Private Limited. A busy man by every sense of the word, but more especially the man behind the man. Rohan, thank you very much indeed for the time. You have really changed the world for us. There's no doubt about that. But growing up in Kandy and all of that, tell us about a little bit about that.
Well, actually, I was born in Gampaha, at the General Hospital Gampaha, to be very specific. But you might wonder as to why I studied in Kandy. I was boarded in the hostel at St. Anthony's College, Kandy, when I was just 5 years.
A fellow boarding with him.
Exactly, because the reason I was such a notorious kid in my childhood, and then my parents put me in the hostel because they couldn't control me. And then throughout I was at St. Anthony's College, Kandy. And soon after my O-levels, I received a scholarship to go to Japan on a cultural exchange program, the American Field Service.
So even as a youngster, you were a little bit different?
Well, yes, I think I was rather, because none of the contemporaries were interested in martial arts. But my hobby was martial arts when I was in grade 7, 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very fond of martial arts, karate, kung fu, and then you need permission to go out of the hostel. So I was, playing truant. I was just sneaking myself out of the hostel to attend some karate classes.
So you taught yourself, or you were going to classes?
I was going to classes,
okay.
Yes.
And they were free classes, or you just sort of...
No, we had to pay a small amount of
So how did you manage that in the hostel?
Well, through my pocket money.
Okay.
Yes.
So even then you were a bit of a pioneer. You didn't settle for what was normally considered.
Well...
The rules were important, or you just sort of considered them?
Well, to me, of course, it's both ways. I mean, partially I was an obedient student, but then when I wanted to get something done, for example, my interest was in martial arts, so I wouldn't mind at that time even to bend the rules to get where I wanted to get to.
So very early start, St. Anthony's, hostel,
yes.
Martial arts,
yes.
Starting your life.
Yes.
Impressions as a Sri Lankan, what were the impressions that made a difference in your life?
Well, I think one of the impressions was that during our school holidays, we are back with our parents. And my father was a close friend of former politician, Dr. Perera.
Okay.
So then, although we are from Gampaha, he settled in Yatiyantutta for the reason that he was a friend of Dr. Perera. And then on one of these occasions when I was there in Yatiyantutta, soon after the elections, our dwellings were set on fire.
Okay.
And that has a lasting impact on my mind. I was just barely 10 years at that time. And we ran for our life. So that is one memory that I can recollect, which is embedded in me very strongly.
Very scary thought as well.
That was very scary, yes.
And that somehow fashioned your thinking about being a Sri Lankan and going forward. It also started your thinking about politics.
Yes, maybe that was the
first experience.
First experience, yes.
And a nasty experience is that.
Exactly.
But your life somehow has shaped itself according to what you have wanted to do. And then, of course, getting a scholarship through school.
Yes.
At school, were you a leader as such? Were you a loner? What sort of person were you?
Well, until about grade 5, 6, I was rather a backward loner, as you say. But then, since I took into martial arts, it built a lot of self-confidence in me. And then I emerged as a leader. And then I, of course, took part in athletics. Then I played rugby for my school. And then when I left school, I was in the final year, I was the head prefect of the school.
Fabulous.
Yes.
It's a great achievement for a little scamp who's sneaking off to become head prefect.
Yes.
But it sort of shaped your destiny as well, because it gives you like you said, the confidence to be able to stand up and face anything. That was the start.
Sure, that is, yes. That foundation was very important.
So you're very grateful to school for that system.
Of course, I'm eternally grateful to my alma mater for putting this foundation. Especially the teachers, the principals. Especially I can single out one name, Reverend Father Stephen Abraham was the principal during larger part of my career at St. Anthony's. Yeah.
So wonderful history.
It is.
And then from there you became this single-minded person. I think the martial arts beginning obviously has that ability for persistence and not give up.
Sure.
So then across to Japan,
Sure.
and the next step.
Yes. Actually, now the scholarship offered me a choice of selecting between USA, UK, New Zealand, Australia,
Okay.
and Japan was also one of the countries. So I selected Japan for two reasons.
You
One was
stand up
my-
straight away.
One is that my love for martial arts. I thought I could pursue my interest in martial arts when I go to Japan. Secondly, I thought now going to UK, USA, Australia, New Zealand, that will give me an occasion to brush up my English. But I thought by going to Japan that I can pick up another language.
Okay.
So for those two reasons, I selected Japan.
Was Japanese the welcome? Was it a shock to the system, or was it something that you really looked forward to and it became part of your life very quickly?
Well, I'm a person who can adapt very soon. So, for example, there were other cultural exchange students in the school that I attended,
Okay.
and we were permitted to go to the library and stay in the library because because all the lessons were conducted in Japanese, so we couldn't understand a thing. But I opted to stay in the class, although I did not understand a thing. So after a few months, after about 3 months, I started to understand, and then at the latter part of the year, I took part in a speech contest organized by NHK Radio, that is their national television, for the Japanese speech contest for the foreigners living in Japan.
Okay.
And 42 countries took part, and I managed to secure the first place.
Wow.
So I picked up the language.
That
yes.
must have been a huge hurdle to cross.
It was an achievement by itself, yes.
But the Japanese language itself, it's sort of given your love for martial arts and everything else, and you're embracing the culture.
Sure.
So the language you absorb rather well.
I think so. I think I was young at that time, and then your mind is, already, it can absorb so many things when you're young.
You decided then that the ability or your ability to perceive was a bit better than everybody else? Perceptions in your mind that you were able to absorb things and be very quick about that.
Well, I have never, compared myself as such, but I think if you look at what I have done, I think I have been rather observant and I have been quick in, picking up things.
I was going to say that because it's not an easy concept to live with and to be an innovator as well. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of mind, a lot of heart and a lot of courage. But you have persisted. Your story really is about persistence and perseverance. Tell us about that.
But sometimes the people who does it, they do not know exactly what they have been doing. It is other people who look at you and tell you what you have been doing. So yes, I mean, now you can summarize and say, yes, there was a lot of persistence because the present business idea was conceived while I was in Japan during my scholarship.
But not at the time.
Not at the time, yeah. So then it took me almost 15 years, and between that 15 years, 47 visits to Japan. So now people, yeah, of course, there is a lot of perseverance because even on the 46th occasion, I did not know that they were going to say yes to this idea.
So then, of course, there is that separation between heart and mind and the strength of all of that.
Yeah.
I think people will need to know here in Sri Lanka about how you did not give up on that persistence, that your idea that you pursued 46 trips. How did you manage to finance all of that stuff?
Well, actually, it's not a rags to riches story. We were moderately rich. I mean, my father, we had ancestral properties belonging to us.
It's middle class.
Middle class, I should say. And therefore, I mean, my father was supporting me with all the money that I needed initially. And then I think the passion, there should be a passion in whatever you do. And the passion came because I started my career as practicing lawyer in Gampa High Courts and the Commercial High Courts of Colombo. And when I started my career, I was wondering, there was a cognitive dissonance, as you said, where heart and mind couldn't agree. And this cognitive dissonance, was a driver rather. So I was wondering now, as an attorney at law, I mean, you have to charge your client. But I was wondering what is my contribution to the national GDP, because I am charging a client, in most cases, who's poorer than I. So I thought the greatest contribution would be to bring in some foreign revenue to the country. So it was in my subconscious. get into some business that would bring foreign revenue to the country. So that was the larger motivation. And whenever I traveled, when I was coming through Changi Airport in Singapore or some other airport, I would purchase books every time. And if you look at the books that I had purchased even before starting this venture, they were related to how to manage a company, how to think like a CEO, that kind of thing, because that's about management and so on. So when you look at these, it gives you an idea. This has been in the subconscious of my mind.
So you are very much guided by your subconscious.
Oh, well, I mean, looking at things now, you can reflect and say yes.
It's been a big part of your life.
Definitely.
When you have that asset as such, because it is really an asset to have that sort of strength, what would you advise young people thinking about where they were in your position?
Well, the first thing is the biggest obstacle that you've got to overcome when you have an idea as this, because now what I manufacture is a device that would distinguish between life and death. For the impact, the airbag must come out.
Critical factor.
It's a critical component. And that is why the uniqueness of what I do is its quality requirement, which is called 1 ppm quality. 1 part per million is the defect tolerance rate. So it is a product that cannot fail. And that is the highest level of quality anywhere in the world.
It's almost an absolute.
Absolutely, no defects. So as I said, it's life and death. So when you conceive an idea as such, what you do first is you test the idea with your friends. You ask, what do you think of this idea? I have ideas.
It's a big risk.
It's a big risk. And my advice to the youngsters, because I'm coming back to your question, my advice to the youngsters is they would, like I did, they would test with their friends. But let me tell the youngsters that most of your friends will advise you based on their experience. But if they have no experience, what you have conceived in your mind, then they are not fit enough to advise you. So my opinion is, if they have a great idea, don't seek too many opinions. Be confident of that idea and forge ahead. Because it is being said in Sri Lanka, if you want to lose the essence of a great idea, they say put it to a committee.
That might be one of those overstated facts for sure. It is vital though that you have that ability to absorb, be persistent, to think about it, and like you said, don't share it too many people.
Sure.
To take it forward.
Yes.
In the quiet time and you were being turned down so many times, what was your thinking then?
Well, one other thing, because now, although I kept on attempting at this was not the only thing that sustained me.
Okay.
I had a line of sustenance. I had an income. So a
So
person,
you had a bread and butter line.
exactly. So a person who does not have that wouldn't have been able to take the risk that I took. Because as I said, even on the 46th occasion, I did not know that they were going to say yes. And had they said no, all the money that I have spent on all these tours would have been futile. So you never know when it pays back. But only thing is, I was confident to be at it.
So the idea was always foremost in your mind, and that you did not give up on that idea.
Exactly. I think the difference is the passion that you have in doing something. I always say this. I mean, the passion that you have in accomplishing something will make the world of a difference. Because if your motivation is the remuneration that follows at the end of the month, and if you are working for a salary, and if that is the only motivation, I think that is not good enough. You should have a passion in whatever you do, and that is when you get into the next level of life.
Wonderful. On that note, we're going to take a break on Game Changers here on our television. Perfect place to break, because he's talking about the passion to go forward. Welcome back to Art Television and to Game Changers here. We're talking with Mr. Rohan Pallewatta about his path in life and his belief in things that sometimes don't always make sense. On Game Changers, it's about Sri Lankans who trailblazed their way through the world and changed what we consider the normality of life. Rohan, it has been a pathway that you have crafted yourself.
Sure.
As you said before, the idea that was born quietly has now grown into something very special indeed. A Sri Lankan icon now, changing the face altogether. But the levels of disappointment is something that you have to learn to live with. How would you explain that to somebody watching in on this and thinking, that could be me?
Well, I think disappointments are part and parcel of life. So there is no straight line to success. If you are aiming to get at a certain destination where you call success, there will be a lot of pitfalls. It's not going to be a straight line to success. It's going to be a roller coaster ride. So you have to be very thick-skinned to bear it all. And I think that's a kind of mindset that you got to develop. And as I said earlier, in my childhood, when our dwellings were set on fire and when we were reduced to zero, and when my father finds it difficult to even pay my school fees, you go through that phase of life where you understand what is difficulty, right? And then that molds you into a person, and that brings you the real iron in you. I think that is very important. Rather than being brought up in a very cozy environment, in a rosy environment, it is very vital for people to understand what hardships are. That molds them to face the future.
Hardship is always something that is a threat in every sense of the word. But like you said very clearly, it also gives you impression, it molds you, and then it takes that vital one step forward. So it's a step by step.
Sure.
Do you believe in that?
I do believe, because you take my life and best example.
So from those early beginnings, there was always a little fire that was burning underneath, whatever they said. But you have now created a whole new chapter in Sri Lankan economic history.
Sure.
It is an enormous stride for business in Sri Lanka. And I remember listening to you about the DNA story.
Yes.
For precision and for efficiency.
Sure.
It is a very real fact that Sri Lankans, through the ages and through history, have been amazing craftsmen.
Sure.
And perhaps we've forgotten that. You have now reminded us.
Sure. Yeah, I always mention this in my speeches as well, because now as I said, when I wanted to embark on this, I was told by many, as I said, this is the highest level of quality anywhere in the world. They said, with the existing work ethic of this country, you cannot do it. With the Sri Lankan workers' mentality, you cannot do it.
So lots of negatives.
Exactly. So as you rightly said, my argument was, or I was rather thinking to the contrary. I was thinking with all the great monuments built by our ancestors almost 2,000 years ago, and the precision work they had undertaken. If you would be more specific, like things like Diya Beduma, right? They were so specific, they so refined work. And I thought this DNA must be somewhere in our people. So I thought, provided the right leadership, that I can rekindle this DNA. And I have been right in my convictions.
That itself is a pioneering, revolutionary thought, to be able to call back on history. But you have proved that Sri Lankans, through the generations and centuries, have been very efficient craftsmen.
Exactly. And I'm thankful to my workforce as well, because all these people who are working here and making this device for all the luxury brands in the world are Sri Lankan workers. They are not foreigners. They are our lads and lasses from our own villages, right? And they come and they achieve this quality. But one thing, make sure that they are first-time employees. I do the interviews myself, still, and so that they don't carry baggages. And they achieve this quality, the world standard that is required.
That itself is an amazing statement for the world, and it just shows what is possible if you say it so correctly. It really does come down to leadership.
Sure.
And belief, but it also comes down to good training.
Sure.
So tell us a little bit about the training that you undertake with these
Well, we send all our employees to Japan for a training. But the uniqueness is not sending them to Japan. Over the past 15 years, every employee that has been sent to Japan has returned. And even the previous ambassador, Mr. Hobo, visited this factory at least on 3 occasions to find out the tool that I have, utilized to get these people back. He thought, myself being an attorney at law, that I must have drafted the most comprehensive bond agreement.
Some legal factor.
Exactly. But that is not the truth. we have what is called a trust culture in place. We trust each other. So I did not get a single document signed from them. I just summoned them to the boardroom. I look at their eyes and tell them, I trust that you would come back. If you do not come back, you are depriving the opportunity of someone else, one of your own brethren, one of your sisters, you are depriving. And they would come. And for the past 15 years, our return rate has been 100%. I think this is the only company in Sri Lanka, I'm proudly saying this, that has a 100% record where every trainee that is being sent to a country like Japan has returned back to the country.
Phenomenal story. It is a 100% record. More importantly, it's all about heart and mind, as you said. You look
Sure.
in their eyes and ask them.
Sure.
And you tell them the truth, and you
Yeah.
believe in them. So
That's
that
right.
you have lived with. All your life has been a story of belief and not giving up.
Sure. And also, I mean, of course, trusting someone is like poking your head inside the lion's mouth. But then you have to take that risk. But it has positives as well. For example, in this factory, in my production line, we did not have a supervisory grade. And also when they put up this facility, they wanted to know if they could fix monitors around my table and fix cameras to the production floor. CCTVs. I disagreed. I said, because I believe, the moment you fix a camera behind a human being, you are encroaching human dignity. So then they start working for the reason because they are being supervised. But if a person is working for the reason that they are being supervised, that is not a good reason to work. So they should work because they take pride in what they do. So whenever we take our employees to Japan, we give them a test drive in one of the luxury end vehicles like the Lexus range. And then another tour, we tell them, what is fixed to this vehicle is what you manufacture there back in Sri Lanka. And they say they are surprised. They ask, is that really true? Right. They ask in Sinhala,
Wonderful.
right? And then they come with that pride back to Sri Lanka because they know they are engaged in a very high-tech thing. They are in par with all world standards. That gives them a lot of pride. And then that is the right reason for an employee to work. And that is important in achieving 1 ppm quality.
It's absolute truth, because it is somebody who will grow in stature once they've been to Japan and come back. And once they understand the quality of what they do, the world is stopped a little bit to consider Sri Lanka fabulous.
Yeah.
But your belief is still about the heart, though. It's very much the heart in what you do, and the people that you meet with, the people you have employed. The heart is a very important part of your operation.
Definitely, because we are bonded like a family, and that is very important. And we have a stand-up meeting every day at 7:30 in the morning, every day. If I'm in Sri Lanka, I make it a point to attend that meeting every day. And so it is important to not to have grapevines, to have direct communication with your employees. My employees does not have to wait for appointments. They can just walk up to me and talk to me. And also sometimes even their grievances, personal grievances, they can come and confide in me. So you have to be like a father figure to them.
You are very much a father figure.
I think the response that I'm having is that is how they have accepted me.
So you have a very large amount of children
Yes, that's right.
to deal with.
Yeah.
So your foundation is driven on goodness and positive, and not fear and CCTV.
No, not necessarily. And also by having that, eliminating the supervisory grade, you eliminate unnecessary structures. Because in an organization,
And hierarchy.
exactly, every layer should be adding value. There cannot be passengers. It applies to a country as well, it applies to a government as well. You cannot have layers that is not adding value. Because if there are layers that's not adding value, the ship is going to sink.
Very much so, because you create division.
Sure.
So you believe in this, and now you have pioneered an amazing company, a corporation really, a global hitter.
Yeah.
For Sri Lankan, it is an amazing story. And for all of us, a matter of pride and privilege to be able to sit with you, to listen to your pathway.
Humbled.
Fabulous indeed, but now the next step for you is based on efficiency. You've achieved the 1 ppm, which is unbelievable. And you have shown that Sri Lanka is an amazing place in itself, and the people even more so.
Well, I'm humbled by what you said. And achieving 1 ppm quality once might be possible, but sustaining it, maintaining it over the years,
That's the challenge.
is a challenge. Because the final quality, a person might think it's in the final product, not necessarily. The quality is in the process. So when the quality is in the process, maintaining is, you have to be at it all the time.
Absolutely vital. There's
Yes.
no room for error.
Exactly.
So now, on that note, of course, I think people will be curious about Harness and what they do and the product that you made and
Yes.
how important efficiency is. But tell us about how you came about this amazing story of devising this little technology that has now hit the world in no uncertain terms, and you work with the greatest of them around the world.
Yes. Well, as I said earlier, once I received my scholarship to go to Japan, it was the structure of the scholarship to take me to visit all the big conglomerates in Japan. You name it, Toyota, Honda, Mitsubishi, Matsushita Denki, which is known as National Panasonic in this part of the world.
Biggest global big
Exactly.
hitters.
And then the present business idea was conceived in my mind in one of my visits to Toyota. And I saw this product, which was rather labor intensive. And I thought, then I just simply asked the person who was explaining the process to me as to how much a worker is being paid there. Then when I converted it into Sri Lankan rupees, it was around 150,000 to 200,000 rupees. So although I was just 16 at that time, I did not have to do any feasibility study or calculation to understand, knowing the abundance of labor in my own country, that it would be feasible doing it in Sri Lanka. So that is when the idea was conceived, but it is not an overnight success from there. I received a totally negative answer. He said, this is a critical component. Don't ever even think, because I suggested to him, if it is a labor intensive product, why not do it in a country like Sri Lanka?
Labor is available and
Abundant,
cheaper.
yes. And then he said, a vehicle comes into being by about 17,000 components coming together, if it is a standard vehicle. But if it's a luxury vehicle, twice as that. About 34,000 components come together and make a vehicle. He said, we do outsource to other countries certain components, but there is a list called the critical component list, and the devices in this list we shall never ever impart to any other country, because the function of these devices are so bonded with the brand name, and therefore we wouldn't
Trust
ever.
anybody else.
Exactly. So it was a total negative answer. But even I received a negative answer. I did not have a logical explanation to this. I persisted. At the end of the two, I requested for a few samples. Then I came back to Sri Lanka. So after a while, I reverse engineered. I dismantled one, and then dispatched it to Japan, the person who took me around Toyota to explain the process.
So step by step.
Exactly. So, but then it took 15 years for me to get one door open. Yeah.
In 15 years, you just kept on. You didn't give
Exactly.
up. You didn't look any other way. You
As I said, there was a line of sustenance, and that was not my bread and butter. So I kept on trying.
But this is always there.
It is always there. It was there
It was
throughout.
a fire that was burning.
Exactly. As I said, there was a cognitive dissonance. From my profession, what is my contribution to the GDP of the nation?
So the bigger picture was always at the back of your mind.
Definitely.
And being able to sustain that gave you that one step by step. But more importantly, your belief, did it grow with the amount of time that you were turned down, or did you sort of keep pushing at it?
I kept on pushing it, because if I had not had the fuel, the passion, I wouldn't have survived all those years.
So in everything that you do, passion is a driver.
Definitely. I think not only me, anyone, I think should take a cue from this. There should be a passion in whatever you do.
Passion is belief, belief is strength, strength is you, and Harness has shown with you as the pioneer behind it.
Well, over the years, yes. Now we started by supplying Toyota, Honda, all the brands in Japan are using right now the produce that we make here. And then now we are supplying not only the Japanese companies, we are supplying Volvo, Saab, BMW, Aston Martin,
The Europeans.
European, that's Volkswagen, Opel, then in USA, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler. So we have covered almost all the big brands in the world at the moment.
So you have
And we
a
are
separate
supplying,
map.
yes. Earlier we supplied only to Japan, but right now we are supplying to Germany, Romania, Thailand, China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, Russia, 17 countries, more than 17 countries.
On that note, beautiful, wonderful story, because then there's a map according to Harness now.
Exactly, exactly.
There you are. It's Game Changers, talking with Rohan Pallewatta, who is more important to Sri Lanka than anything else I can imagine, whose strength and belief is taking us forward.
Through the corridors of sleep, lie shadows dark and deep. My mind dances and lips in confusion. I don't know what is real, I can't touch what I feel, and I hide behind the shield of my illusion. So I continue to pretend that my life will never end, and flowers never bend with the rainfall. The mirror on my wall casts an image dark and small. I'm not sure at all it's my reflection. I'm blinded by the light of God and truth and right, and I wander in the night without direction. So I continue to pretend that my life will never end, and flowers never bend with the rainfall. No matter if you are born to play the king or pawn, the line is thinly drawn to enjoy sorrow. So my fantasy becomes reality, and I must be what I must be and face tomorrow. So I continue to pretend that my life will never end, and flowers never bend with the rainfall.
Welcome back to Game Changers, and that was Life by Rohan Pallewatta, if there's anything you could say. Wonderful indeed. Game Changers today is all about his pathway and his very unique approach to life. It's a simple but humble story, but an amazing story in itself. It has shown Sri Lankans that culture, history, and our inheritance is an amazing pathway. Rohan, we all sit here very comfortably, but it is an amazing story of hard work, persistence, innovation, and not giving up. You have tried and tried and tried again. That has been your benchmark, if anything.
Sure. Humbled by that, and I think even an interview like this is kind of motivation, because someone comes and interview you and they say, "We have done this," then it gives you an occasion to reflect back and of what you have achieved in life.
Stop and think.
Exactly.
You talked earlier about on your 46 visits to Japan and back, waiting for an answer, that you started acquiring books. You became an avid reader, and your philosophy in life also shaped a little?
Definitely. I'm an avid reader, not only then, I'm an avid reader even now.
Okay.
Because every year, I'm an avid diary keeper. I keep my diary every day. And in that diary, on the first 2 pages, I write as to what I want to, it's not goals as such, things that I want to do.
This is a thought.
Exactly, during this year. So in that, one thing is that one resolution, New Year resolution, is to read at least 12 books. And when I pick these books, it's not going to be on one single field. It might be one on the X-gen thinking, one might be on the digital economy, one might be on the new developments in law, various fields. Because I believe if you read only one, if you have only interest in marketing or if you only have interest in law, then your vision becomes a piped vision. Mm-hmm. So in order to have a more comprehensive, more all-encompassing vision, you got to read from different fields. So I still read to date, and I read at least 12 books every year.
So you stick to that very simple philosophy.
I do stick, yes. And to share more with you, I mean, as to what I want to do, for example, simple things like going to Yala at least twice a year and photographing the leopard, and these kind of things are also included in there. Because life is meant to be, you have to live your life.
Certainly.
So it's not going to just sit in office and do your routine work. You have to come out of your routine and you have to, and you become creative. Because when you're caught up in a routine, people don't become creative because they're caught up in a routine. But if you are to be creative, if you are to have, freedom of thinking, you got to get out of your routine and take a break.
And in that routine, you talk about being creative and not having tunnel vision, for example. Yes. Sri Lanka is a vital component of all that because it offers so much. It is an amazing country in itself and an amazing amount of people too, as you have shown and proved beyond a shadow of doubt. Like your visit to Yala, for example, the leopard and the elephant and the peacock. Talking about the leopard, Rohan, and 5 hours in one place, it's a very harsh lesson and you learn very quickly how to be patient. You have no choice.
Definitely. And then when you look at the picture, it brings all that 5 hours back to your mind, how we have been waiting to capture that moment. So it is only then that I came to appreciate these photographs about leopard, because unless I had no idea, I thought the moment you go into the park, the leopard would come forward and then you can click it. But that is not correct. So I understood how difficult it is to capture these moments.
And these are wild animals, though.
Definitely.
Living in their own environment.
Sure.
And you then try to fit into their environment.
Yeah, that's right.
And to try and capture that is magnificent.
Definitely it is.
Leopard, Sri Lanka, Sri Lankan people, your business, the precision technology that you live with, your life, time off. Apart from the leopard, how else did you spend time off?
Well, I do take a few holidays overseas as well every year. No phones, nothing, not contactable, right? I go missing all of a
Off
sudden.
the map.
Off the map. And that is very important to recharge your batteries. Spend in tranquility, absolute tranquility.
Do you meditate?
I do meditate, yes.
Believe in it completely?
Yes, because it has to be part and parcel of, meditation is deep concentration.
So the breathing and the following the philosophy of...
Sure, because that helps you, regain yourself, recharge your batteries.
Clears the mind.
Exactly. And to be honest, I meditate every day because you have to, we are human beings, we get these illusions very soon. So every day you have to meditate and bring back your focus. It's very important.
Bring back that positive into your life.
Exactly. So whatever you have set your mind, right, and then you might go out of focus during daytime with all the interactions that you have with other human beings. And so meditation is a good thing that brings back that focus every night. It is important to do it every night because unless you will lose your way and you will not understand that you have lost your way.
So you're able to detect if when you are straying a little bit.
Exactly.
Being a very proud Sri Lankan, how important is family and team and company, all of that? In what order?
Well, I think that question is rather a Western, thinking oriented question. I would rather say that.
Okay.
Because in Sri Lanka, I do not think that we do not have our time for families. I think family is our priority. Because imagine all these crowded buses and trains after work. Where are they heading? They're heading to their families. So we are family centric. So in Sri Lanka, Westerners might think, work, family and life balance.
Zero separation.
Exactly, there are separations. But I do not think as Asians that we got to think it as separate because I consider family, after all, they're part and parcel of our lives. And it's an extension of your business. It's everything is interconnected.
Purpose.
So I do spend my time with my children, and then it's very important that I spend, because when Jack Welch was questioned as to what he thought the best investment, he in return asked that person who raised the question, do you have children? He said yes. And he said, then go and play with them, that is the best investment.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Sure.
In terms of going forward for you now, as you said very clearly, Sri Lanka really does have a global presence. And it's not impossible. It's not an impossible dream anymore. You have proved that. What would be a vital step for Sri Lanka as a country to look at the global marketplace?
Well, if you look at the past 20 years, our export basket has not changed.
It's been a bit static.
Exactly, it has been static. But if you take countries like Malaysia or even Thailand, if you use colors to depict the export basket of Sri Lanka 20 years ago and now, the colors would be identical. But if you use the same colors for the Malaysian market and the Thai market, the colors are topsy-turvy today. So the knowledge industries has taken over. The labor-intensive industries has become less important in their export structure. So therefore, we Sri Lankans, we have to understand we cannot continue to say garments, garments and garments, more labor-intensive work. We have to get into the stages, other stages of production, like the designing, all these things, and the sales and marketing part. These are the parts that will get you more revenue. For example, I'll give you one example. Vietnam and Sri Lanka 20 years ago had a similar export income. Today our export income is around 8 billion US dollars, and the export income of Vietnam is 178 after 20 years.
And a relatively new country as well.
Exactly. So what made this difference? It is a matter of policy. So you have to have the right policies in place.
So absolutely fundamental that you have those policies in place.
Exactly.
Because we have the workforce.
Sure.
And we can be taught.
Sure.
And they learn quickly.
That's right.
They're clever enough.
They are.
As you have
we
shown.
we have knowledgeable labor, not just labor. They're knowledgeable labor. That is the difference, because there are many countries offering labor, but Sri Lankan labor is special, and that is why a 1 ppm quality product is not being given to any other countries in this region. They have entrusted it only to Sri Lanka.
But it has been a long fight for you. It hasn't been an overnight story.
It is. It was not easy to convince them that we could do it here.
At the end of the day, it really does come down to leadership, persistence, belief, and hard work. The hard work element is important.
It is. Nothing will come out unless you work hard on it. Yes. There's no substitute for hard work.
There never has been, I think.
Yes, there will be.
But for you as Rohan, when you go home and you talk about family and home and that peace of mind, when you meditate, a day is a long day or is it a shorter day for you?
Well, in my meditation, I just scan through the next day, the activities of the next day as well, and reflect of what has been going through the day that I lived, and what has made me deviate from my original convictions, and how I should get back to my original focus. This has been the core of the meditation that I do.
Living your life the way you have done, challenge has always been something that you have welcomed. You've never stepped away from it. Tell us a bit about that as you leave us today, about challenge and that strength of mind to keep going despite all the odds.
Well, I think it's a state of mind that you develop over time. And challenges, they have always inspired me rather than frightening me. So I have taken up challenges. And it's not easy, and because I have taken challenges that I have managed to create a path for myself, because I have not trod a path that someone else has created for me. It's very easy to take a path that someone else has already created. That is what most of the people, the majority would do.
Just follow.
They would follow, right? If you ask some university undergraduates what their aspirations are, they will name a few blue chip companies that are existing, and they will say, we will be joining these companies. But my question to them when I conduct lectures, I question them, if every one of you thought of joining an existing blue chip company, where is the generation that will create these enterprises for the next generation to get employed? So isn't there a single person that is original, trying to create his own or her own path? So we have to take challenges, because as Mahatma Gandhi said, when you try to be different, when you try to take a different path, people will ignore you, they will ridicule you, they will laugh at you. If possible, they will fight you, but then you win, and that is the path.
That is the strength in not being put down, because people will try to push you down.
Exactly.
Try to push you away, but you keep forging ahead.
Sure.
And you have done that.
I think so.
And you have also proved that Sri Lankans can step up to the mark and be a global challenger.
Definitely, Sri Lankans definitely can. Because even when my employees go to Japan, they become indispensable in those factories that they work. And there's a myth saying, Japanese are so skilled than the Sri Lankans. That becomes a myth when my employees go and get into their production lines. They become indispensable.
And like you said, everyone who has gone to Japan and trained has all come back. And that trust has grown over the years. And you still believe in that. Your team is very strong. So your team ethic is based on goodness, wellness, and heart.
Sure. It's all a matter of building a right team with the right attitude, right values. So then comes the leadership, because you need a leader to develop all that.
As a leader, are you a harsh leader? Do you believe in discipline? Or are you a freedom fighter who believes that the work and the team is also one?
Yes, I should say I'm a firm leader. I'm a firm leader. And I deal with justice, irrespective of the seniority.
Fair play.
Fair play, 100%. And that is leadership.
Rohan Pallewatta, thank you very much indeed. It has been a privilege and a journey of unbelievable proportion to consider you and what you have done and the path that you have forged ahead. More importantly, the way you have shown that Sri Lanka has a massive future ahead, an intellectual property that can grow from time to time beyond imagination. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for their time. Thank you.
On Game Changers, you have heard from the Executive Chairman of Harness Lanka Private Limited about stories, pathways, meditation, leopard, but more importantly, about pride in belief and not giving up.